Pause. 4, 3.
It's the Comedy Store tonight, starring Argus Hamilton. With tonight's guest, Baum, Rick Ingraham, and now, live from the bowels of the world's greatest comedy club, it's the Comedy Store tonight, starring Argus.
Thank you all. Thank you all for being here. Great audience tonight. Fantastic crowd. Welcome to the Comedy Store tonight. I'm Argus Hamilton, and glad to have you all indoors. You won't believe it. Here in town, the National Weather Service announced today that Los Angeles is having its coldest February in 60 years. And you don't have to tell us. This morning in Beverly Hills, it was colder than a witch's implant. A lot of people come here to be in show business. A lot of actors start out as Hollywood waiters, and if they get lucky and catch a big break, they become Beverly Hills waiters. Now, down in Orange County, they're trying to rename John Wayne Airport because of a 1971 Playboy interview he gave where he said he supported white supremacy in the face of the Black Panthers and Angela Davis. Being dead allows you to say a lot of racist things. I, for one, plan to never work with John Wayne again. And Coca-Cola scientists in Atlanta today defended sugary drinks amid the obesity epidemic, blaming obesity on lack of exercise and poor diet. Look, if Coca-Cola really cared about the obesity epidemic, they'd put the cocaine back in the recipe. Speaking of that, Target just announced they're selling its own brand of wine. And not to be outdone, Walmart's going to introduce its own brand of fentanyl. And did you hear the news out of Chicago today? Rap star R. Kelly finally got bailed out after spending all weekend in jail. Some woman he doesn't know, a 47-year-old suburban woman in Chicago, bailed him out. I don't care how cold it is in Chicago. The forecast for this woman tonight is showers. Now, we all know what happened to New England Patriots owner Robert Kraft over the weekend. Today, Robert Kraft tearfully reported that while vacationing in Jupiter, Florida, two women disguised as Asian masseuses viciously attacked his penis. You know, the problem with consorting with Asian hookers is that an hour later you're horny again. But, you know, it's serious stuff. If Robert Kraft winds up going to prison, he'd be the first person in NFL history to go from owner to wide receiver. Well, right now it's sad, but tensions are very high internationally on the India-Pakistan frontier. Military action is being threatened, and both sides have nuclear weapons. And it's serious. If India gets wiped out, it could leave 300 million Americans without tech support. The Washington Post warned Democrats today to stop preaching socialism because they said socialism will get them defeated next election. All I know is that everybody hates socialism until I break out a pack of chewing gum. Speaking of the left, Senator Elizabeth Warren today came out in favor of universal child care. We baby boomers had universal child care when we were being raised. It was called parents. President Trump gave a big announcement for the July 4th upcoming celebration. He issued a hold the date. Well, that's progress for him. At least he didn't say hold the date by the crotch. And today, President Trump arrived in Vietnam. The poor Vietnamese can't catch a break, you know. Just when they thought they were forever rid of Agent Orange, he shows up at 3 in the morning. Well, and meanwhile, Kim Jong-un, the North Korean dictator, well, he arrived in Hanoi by train. He took a train from North Korea to Hanoi rather than fly to Hanoi or try to fly to Hanoi, which already shows he has more common sense than John McCain did at that age. And meanwhile, finally, back at my alma mater, the University of Oklahoma, the Delta Kappa Epsilon fraternity, the Deeks, apologized after their pledge class freaked out during initiation ceremony last week when they took the blindfolds off and there were live goats in the chapter room the kids thought they were going to have sex with. And the campus reaction is pure outrage. But the Arab Student Union is suing the fraternity for cultural appropriation. We've got a great show for you tonight. We got Bruce Baum, we got Rick Ingraham, and we got you. Welcome to the Comedy Store tonight. We'll be right back. Thank you so much. Wonderful crowd. Thank you all. Welcome back to the Comedy Store tonight. And I couldn't be happier to bring out our first guest. This guy, when we first started, back when the world was young, this guy was absolutely a sensational and is a sensational actor all over the country. But we sort of came up through the ranks together back in the days of the Comedy Store Westwood. Became an international sensation as Baby Man from Make Me Laugh, and it's been headlining ever since. I want you to give it up for a Comedy Store original, Bruce Baum, ladies and gentlemen. Nice to have you here, Bruce.
I'm gonna blush. I'm gonna blush.
Hey, I hear you you nearly didn't make it here tonight.
I didn't. I almost got arrested.
No.
I'm walking through my hood before I'm getting ready to come here.
Yeah.
I've got a hood.
You do?
I got a hood. And I see a gate with a sign on it. It says, attack dog. So I'm kicking the shit out of this dog. And by the time the cops got there, so I didn't know whether, I'm deciding whether to wear hats or not.
What do you think?
Hat?
Do you like the hat?
No hat. Okay. I'm gonna tell you, my wife, when she's home, I saw Dr. Oz.
Yeah.
My wife's watching Dr. Oz, so I saw it.
Yeah.
Dr. Oz the other day said that for every 30 pounds that a man loses, his penis grows an inch.
Really?
So I figure if I can get myself down to about 60 pounds, I'll look like a centipede dragging a troll. I lost a lot of money recently.
Yeah.
Apparently, I opened up my feng shui store in a really bad location.
Really?
Yeah. So, you think that's bad luck? My uncle just paid to have cryogenics done.
Really?
That's when they freeze you when you die, so when they find a cure, and then yesterday he died of hypothermia.
Oh, man. Bruce is very important to Comedy Store history because his father was a highly regarded Beverly Hills attorney, Leonard Baum.
Right.
And he was Mitzi Shore's attorney who helped broker the purchase of this entire building. Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
My dad, let me just give you a little, my parents were raising a comedian unknowingly.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, my parents never had music albums.
Right.
All their albums were comedy albums. Jonathan Winters, Bill Dana, Pryor, Carlin, Bill Cosby. So, and then they'd hide the Red Fox records.
Yeah.
Those. So I grew up listening to, and when I was, if we were in bed and a comic came on TV, my dad would say, hey, if you guys aren't asleep, you can come down and watch the comic, then it's right back to bed.
Right.
So shoot ahead. Now, this is about 5 or 6 years ago. My dad had a stroke.
Yeah.
And they said at UCLA intensive care that it was the worst brain hemorrhage they'd ever seen.
Really?
And for 6 weeks, just stuff was coming out of his head.
Oh my gosh.
And they said if he ever comes to, he won't know who you are. He won't be able to talk. It'll be like having a big baby. You won't understand anything if he ever comes to.
Right.
And then they even a couple of times said, you know, if things don't change in the next couple of days, maybe we should talk about some of the options. After 6 weeks, he opens his eyes, and it kind of looks like a computer rebooting.
Really?
And after a while, he kind of looks lucid.
Yeah.
And not knowing if he's been in pain,
Right.
not knowing if he'll understand what we say.
Yeah.
My sister leans over and says, Dad, are you comfortable? He goes, I make a nice living. True story.
The lesson here is some lawyers you just can't kill.
True story.
Oh,
So
man.
he was,
Leonard was a great friend of Mitzi's and really helped establish this place. And you were here in the late 70s with your then partner, Ken Eston.
well, we got here about 75, I think.
Yeah, and Baum and Eston were, along with Samuels and Cohen, were like the top teams, you know,
Yeah.
of the baby boomers.
And the odd thing is I'm working with Marty Cohen on a project right now.
Wow.
But we'll get to that in a little bit. But yeah, when we started out here, George Miller saw us at the Ice House. We were opening for Scatman Crothers before it was a comedy club.
Yeah. And Scatman was doing TV all the time in the 70s.
Right. And for those of you who don't know, he was in The Shining, and in the 40s he was a big singer, big band singer.
Yeah.
I mean, big band singer.
Yeah. And he came up through the Chitlin circuit with Red Fox and Slappy White.
Right.
Yeah.
So we auditioned the same night as Dave Letterman.
Wow.
And became regulars right off the bat. So
Wow.
when we started out in comedy, we came here in 75. Now, I was here on a date with Ken about 2 years before he went up to Davis, UC Davis, and we were in the audience, and and this is when Sammy had the club, Sammy Shore, and I asked whether I could go on. I'd never done stand-up. I was just watching guys, and they said, go ahead, and I went up, and I killed.
Really?
And I'd go there on dates, because that was like, wow, you know, that was like, whoa, that's more than a movie or...
Sure.
So the next, I call all my friends from high school. You're not going to believe it. I went on to the Comedy Store last night. No, you didn't. Yeah, I'm telling you. I went on at the and they invited me back tonight. Because everybody after the first, hey, where you been working? I go, nowhere. I just went up and winged it. I tried to recreate that the second night. You could hear the cars going by. You could hear people stirring their drinks. So it was years before I hit the stage again. And when I was in college, Ken Eston, my cousin, he was first cousin.
By the way, who's an Emmy-winning writer and producer.
Right, Cheers, Taxi, and a bunch of other shows, the Tracy Ullman Show. And so there were no clubs, but we were like writing material. So we would run into the library and blow a horn, and Ken would do his banjo, and everybody would stop. We'd do like 3 or 4 minutes of stand-up, and then we would run away. And we did the same thing in Dining Commons, whenever there was a group. And then we would write a letter to the school paper, say, there's guys coming into the library, and we can't study for midterms because they're making us laugh. Then the next day, we would write a letter from the Student Health Center saying we have a rash of people coming in with broken cheeks, and the only thing in common they have is they've all been laughing real hard. So there were no clubs, but we created, and then we started getting hired at like bars. And I don't know how we did this. We would do 4 45-minute sets.
Oh, no.
And I mean, you want to talk about mugging and winking.
Yeah.
I mean, we were like, but back
You got
then,
5 minutes of material and 160 minutes to
right.
go.
Which is funny. The first time we ever got a gig, we were on break from college, and we went to all the medical buildings in the San Fernando Valley. And we tried to get jobs coming in to entertain crowded waiting rooms.
Really?
Figuring they're just listening to music.
In like
Yeah.
The emergency room, waiting room?
No. Those big, tall medical buildings
Oh,
on
yeah,
Ventura
yeah.
Boulevard.
Yeah.
So we would go in there and say, would you like us to come in? We'll entertain crowded waiting rooms. Well, a psychiatrist came out and said, "Are you guys crazy?" He said, "You guys will be spreading disease from the place that's there to see people with the flu to the people that just have a broken arm. You're going to be going from office to office." But, my daughter and my wife have a birthday on the same day. And we're having a big party for them. Do you guys know the song Scarlet Ribbons? And while Ken's saying no, I'm saying it's in our act. So they hired us for like $20 to come and entertain for like 20 minutes and then close. He says, "If you guys sing Scarlet Ribbons, my wife and daughter, they'll cry."
Oh, no.
And they did, but not because it was sentimental. We were, after about 15 minutes of material, because back then we did a lot of songs and we were like, so
Did you have the little monkey?
Yeah, the monkey. Yeah, that was like our go-to. So he would. He leaned over, like we're in the middle of a song, goes, we're doing like, "Rolling My Sweet Baby's Arms," and we'd written funny lyrics. He goes, do Scarlet Ribbons next. And I lean over to Ken and I go, "This is going to be the longest version of "Rolling in My Sweet Baby's Arms." We finally got to Scarlet Ribbons, and they cried, but it wasn't because we were tender. It was, we butchered the song.
Did you know the lyrics at all?
Well, we went out and got the record, and we listened to it over and over and over again, but it's a very sweet, tender song, and we
Well, when I got to the scene in '76 and in the Westwood Comedy Store, you guys were already like right up next to the headliner. Like Jimmy Walker would follow you. It would go David Letterman, Tom Dreesen, Jay Leno, you all, and then Jimmy Walker.
Right.
And the place was just booming. And it was a short time after that, in the late '70s, when "Make Me Laugh" came along and made you a star.
"Make Me Laugh" was, I think, pivotal in getting the comedy boom started. First of all, the Comedy Store was the cocoon, so to speak. I mean, that's because they.
And Missy was the gatekeeper.
Right, and "Make Me Laugh," if you back in those days, if you went on the Tonight Show and killed, and you went to work the next day and said, "Hey, did you see that guy on the Tonight Show last night?" "Oh, I missed it." "Oh, well, he'll probably be on it again in a couple months." Well, with "Make Me Laugh," you could say, "Did you see Make Me?" "No." "Well, he's on again tonight," because you'd be on Monday through Friday.
Every night, like at 11 o'clock
Right.
on Channel 5 in Los Angeles, from 11 o'clock to 11:30.
Right.
And what happened was, it's like 78, 79, 80. It stayed on the air until the executive producer died, George Foster.
And the host, Bobby Van died. They died within 2 weeks of each other.
And it was really too bad because the "Make Me Laugh" was beating the local news in the ratings.
Yeah. And for those of you who don't know the show, there'd be 3 contestants, and at the end, a celebrity would come out, and they would try not to laugh.
I'd be sitting here as a contestant. You stand up.
And you get like 1 minute to try to make them laugh.
Yeah.
And if they last through all 3 comics, they get $1 for every second. If they last through all 3 comics, they double that to $360.
And you, the comic, really hope that the crowd doesn't laugh because you get to do all this material to a screaming great crowd.
Right.
And you're getting nothing but exposure while he's sitting there thinking it's important.
Right, if he laughs, he ruins the joke before you get to the punchline.
Yeah.
What I would do is if the guy laughed in the middle before I got to the punchline, the next contestant, I would start the joke exactly where I stopped before, and sometimes that would get them to laugh. Because I would come out and go, and then, it was.
And you came out with a character.
But you know what happened was, I'm sorry, go on.
You came out with the character of Baby Man.
And that was at Westwood is where I debuted that.
Yeah.
Sissy Spacek and Piper Laurie were in the crowd the night I debuted that.
Yeah,
And the crowd went
He
absolutely.
came out in diapers.
Well, I did a bit where, I was on stage in clothes.
Yeah.
And then I got into a large orange bag and said, I'm going to be a stand-up carrot. And I would tell a joke in there.
Yeah.
And when I was taking my clothes off,
Yeah.
very hopefully discreetly.
Yeah.
And when I opened up and dropped it, I was just standing there in diapers.
Baby Man.
And the crowd, then I went, oh shit, now I got to go home and write a piece for this. Because but the Westwood Club was, back in those days, it was, man, that was, there'll never be times like that again. Those were times when every comic working knew every other comic working.
Yeah.
And it's just not like that now. Not that that's better or denigrating to today's, because I think I mentioned to you that there was a thing on the internet a while ago that listed the 10 most depressing occupations.
Yeah.
And comics were number 1.
Really?
And I wrote down, gee, that's great news. When I started, we weren't even a profession. I mean, we've become a profession and depressed.
And it just seemed like for our young viewers tonight that in that period when Mitzi considered this an artist colony, the type of comedy, like there was Letterman was a kind of a template for me. There were the monologists, me, Letterman, Dreesen, but Skip Stevenson, but a lot of really inventive prop comics. Greg Hilbert's was a monologist, but they were music.
Sure, Mule Deer.
Music, a tremendous amount of variety in the comedy
Right.
back then.
Which is, I'm surprised, like that show that's supposed to kind of, I'm Dying Up Here.
Yeah.
You know, I like the show because I know a lot of people in it, but it's not the way it was if they're trying to reflect the way the store was back then.
Yeah.
Did you ever see any of it?
No, but they would have to pay way too much in royalties for all the songs you guys were doing.
Right, but there was no comedy teams in the show.
No.
They still could have written their own songs. It wasn't the cutthroatness that there was. You know, back then, if you knew of a gig, you told the other guys about it.
Yeah.
It wasn't as dark as they portrayed it to be.
And
I always say we were dancing in magic.
Yeah, we were. And Mitzi, at the time, passed you based on what she perceived as your charisma. If she thought you had charisma and you had 2 jokes, she'd send you over to Westwood till you had an act. And so everyone you had, this was the difference to me between the Comedy Store then and I'm Dying Up Here. Because they hired proficient actors, God bless them. But Mitzi had nothing but
But
stars.
also isn't the kind of material that was being done then.
Yeah.
It's different. It was, you know, wasn't representative of what was being done then.
Right.
So, but you know, I have nothing but wonderful memories at the time. We, you know, on some nights you'd bounce back and forth between Sunset and Westwood, and then when La Jolla opened up. You know, I used to do a joke in my act. It's a true story. It's with Gary Shandling and Jeff DeHart, who was an impressionist. You may see him.
Terrific impression.
He does Rod Serling if there's commercials, and he tours as Ed Sullivan with all the Beatle acts that go out. But I tell it in my act. I'll tell it the way I tell it in my act.
All right.
Maybe I'll try. I don't know if it's as funny as the real way. Shandling, DeHart, and I were playing when the Comedy Store was in that Hotel Circle.
Yeah.
And I guess DeHart went on first, and when the show was over, we couldn't find him. So we go back to the car, and Jeff DeHart's asleep behind the wheel.
Really?
Right. So Shandling gets into the passenger seat, and I throw myself onto the hood of the car while Shandling goes, "Look out!" And DeHart woke up just turning the wheel.
Oh, that's wonderful. Oh, Bruce, we got to have you back, man. Give it up for Bruce Baum, ladies and gentlemen. You were fantastic.
Thank you.
Nice to have you, buddy.
Great to be here.
And listen, we are being sponsored by Bacardi, which was my Betty Ford starter kit. And so for all you young kids looking for a good drink recipe, I recommend daiquiris, frozen daiquiris, that you use those little cylindrical limeade, lemonade cans. You pour 1 canful of that into the blender, 2 canfuls of water, 1 canful of Bacardi, and then you mix it all up, and the girls just lap it down. It's fantastic.
All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, my first alcohol commercial. They're going to love hearing about this in Beverly Hills AA. Thank you. We'll be right back. The Comedy Store tonight, and I am honored to have what I consider to be the leader of the millennial comics here at the Comedy Store. This guy's a lot of fun. He's a Protestant Rickles, is all I can say. Ladies and gentlemen, Rick Ingraham. Give it up. Good to have you here, Rick.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Wow. So you've gone normal. You've started a family. You've got a child.
Yep, I have a 2.5-year-old. Just started preschool, so that's
Already?
good. Yep, it's preschool. You know, it's California, so they start them young. But yeah, it's fun. She went 3 days before she got every illness on the planet, and I'm now 3 weeks later. I'm just getting over the plague of all the disgusting children of Calabasas.
Oh my God.
So, but yeah, it's thanks for having me. It's fun to be here.
You bet.
A lot of people, I think, are excited because they knew I was in line to host the Comedy Store tonight, and you kind of Jay Leno'd it away from me. So this is an opportunity to just promote the Comedy Store Late Show that I will be starting on a different channel. It'll actually be on YouPorn. So we know how to get the viewers, but
Yeah. You're going to cover me back in the late 80s.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, so how are you enjoying the audiences? You and I perform in the main room on Friday and Saturday night. How do you like our crowd?
They've been great.
Yeah.
It's awesome to have people in the crowd, I suppose.
Yeah.
I started here in the early 2000s. Eleanor and I on the Comedy Store podcast, we refer to it as the Dark Ages.
Yeah.
Because you'd be lucky some Friday, Saturday nights if you had 25, 30 people here.
Yeah.
And we were still here every night because there was nowhere
Well,
better
Mitzi
to
was
go.
taking second and third mortgages on her house to keep the Comedy Store going then.
Yeah.
Because frankly, there just weren't enough Generation Xers to fill up clubs.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until the millennials came of age it blew up along with the social media.
Social media helped a lot.
Yeah.
Netflix really kind of helped boom some comedians to make them bigger names, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's crazy to have witnessed the transition from.
But you've really come up from.
Yeah. I mean, I was here every night. You know, I'd go up back then at like 1 in.the morning for like 3 people.
Yeah.
Which is when I originally gave up having an act, and I just said this isn't going to work.
Unless you were doing your drunk Argus.
Unless I was doing drunk Argus.
He would do drunk Argus, and it worked every time. I never have seen it.
Yeah, I was actually intoxicated every night at that point. And what happened was I went on the road with Paulie.
Oh, no.
And Paulie had told me stories about, Argus and my mom, and I'm like, wow. So then we started doing morning radio, and he would be like, yeah, and I brought my mom's boyfriend Argus. And so I would just have to be you on morning radio.
Me drunk.
Yeah. Well, no, at that point it was sober. But
Okay.
then when Johnny Carson died,
Oh.
the impression started drinking again.
Okay.
And so then it was just, I was so overwhelmed by losing Johnny that I started hitting the sauce again.
Yeah.
And then I would just spend 6 hours a night walking around the Comedy Store yelling at people as drunk Argus. But it was one of those.
Was the Coke good? That's all I
It was
wanna know.
great.
And good.
And I was a doorman here, so I had gotten to talk to Argus for, extended periods of time.
Yeah.
And he would tell me stories, and I'd ask him questions about the headshots and different people. So I knew all these names, and I would just kind of rattle them off. And then there's a picture in the front hallway of Robin Williams and the Todd.
Yeah.
And I remember asking him, I go, who's this guy with Robin Williams? And he told me that's the Todd, and he told me a little bit about this guy. So I was like, all right. And all I really knew was he was a friend of all the comics. He did some comedy, and he always
tried
had
some
blow.
comedy.
Yeah.
But
He
was
had a
always
lot of blow.
Had a lot of blow.
Yeah.
He was
And
always
so
welcome.
One of my favorite nights at the Comedy Store, it was my 25th birthday, and I was getting hammered, and I was standing in the back hallway, and Robin Williams walked in the back door, and he was just kind of standing at the bottom steps to the OR looking in, and I was standing with Dean Gelber, who was the manager of the club at the time,
Yeah.
and I said,
Here.
oh yeah, his mom and stepfather are here,
Yeah.
and I said, hey Dean, I got to go talk to Robin. And he was like, I don't think that's a good idea. And I was already halfway down the hallway. And so I just walked up to him and I said, hey, Robin. And he turned and looked at me, kind of shocked. I said, the Todd's looking for you. He says that you owe him $1,800 for that cocaine. And he looked around like, am I getting pranked? And he literally ran out of the hallway. And then he came back in. He goes, how do you know who I bought cocaine from? And so then I just kept doing it. He thought it was so fun that he was just like, well, you know, Argus, I think maybe you're a little intoxicated. And I just kept going, I'm not intoxicated, and no one's going to buy this terrible TV show about an alien. It's just not going to fly. And he'd be like, it's really popular. And I just go through every movie he's been in through the 80s and just tell him how no chance of it working. So you're destined for late night spots at the OR. You're never going to be a big deal. It's like, I'm doing pretty good. But then we had some drinks and we had some fun, and I thought it was great. Yeah. And then the next night, Don Barris came up to me and was like, hey, I was telling Jimmy Kimmel about last night, and he said he thought it was weird because Robin's sober. Yeah. And I'm sitting there thinking how many shots of tequila Robin and I did together, and I'm like, what? He didn't seem like he was sober. And then like a week later, it came out in the newspaper, Robin Williams checks into rehab, and I was like, Argus did it again.
It's my way of 12-stepping.
Yeah. Put him back.
I can't wait to share that with my sponsor. She'll be so proud of it.
Yeah, it was a good time. I felt terrible about it, but at the same time, like, it was still one of the funnest nights I've had. So.
And you hurried him on his path to recovery.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, and how we loved Robin. Oh, he
was
sensational.
Great, yeah.
And we lost a dear friend of yours this last week.
We did. We lost Brody Stevens, who was just, one of those legendary Comedy Store comics. And he performed everywhere, but they really kind of let him embrace the what they call the Kinnison spot here. Yeah. And so he did a lot of late night shows, and
but he would do things with people. He took you to Dodger Stadium.
Yeah. He was just all personality.
Yeah, because we had him on the show 4 weeks ago.
Yeah. He had some bits and stuff that he ran, but he just controlled people with just interacting. He was really amazing in that way. But he was one of those guys, like, he played baseball in college, and he never got away from it. And I remember just, like, we asked him, well, what team are you a fan of? And he was so mad. He said, I'm not a fan. I'm a player. And at this point, he's probably 43, 44 years old.
He'd been a prospect in college.
Yeah, he was. And he kind of threw his arm out and whatever, but he still considered himself part of it. So he goes, so what, do you root for the Dodgers? And he said, I'm a player. I represent Major League Baseball. And so I said, all right, man. And the Giants were coming into town, and at the time the Giants had this closer, a guy named Brian Wilson, who seemed real crazy. He had this pitch black beard, and he was just real weird. All of his interviews were really great. And I go, I got to meet that guy. And he goes, we'll go to the game. We'll go on Saturday. I said, all right. So he called. He was friends with all the Dodgers players. His childhood best friend was the bullpen coach for them at the time. Yeah. He's now the bullpen coach for the Cubs. And so he said, we're coming to the game. And Clayton Kershaw got us tickets, players' tickets. So we got in the game, and Brody had 2 passes that were not for that day. Yeah. But he just kept them in his car from different weeks.
You mean field passes?
Field passes.
Yeah.
Oh. And he said,
to walk out on the...
Yeah. And he said, all right, I got these passes. They're not for today, but just don't let anyone see it. And I was like, what? And we walked into the stadium, and we walked straight down to the field, and the security guard obviously recognized him because he just saw him. And he'd been around enough, I guess. He just opened the gate, didn't check.
You got to walk onto the field.
We just walked onto the field before the game started.
And you were with him?
I'm with him, yeah. And so I have a pass from like April 25th, and this is like probably July 30th or something. And we walk on the field, and I'm just like, wow, no one's going to check. And we go over, and he talks to some of the Dodgers for a little bit. And then he goes over.
They knew him.
Yeah, they all knew him. And a bunch of the guys, Kershaw and a bunch of the guys had come here to the Comedy Store a bunch of times. And so then we walked over to the Giants because he wanted to introduce me to the crazy.
Because he represented baseball.
Yeah, he represented everyone. Yeah. So we go over, and some of them recognized Brody from when he worked on the Best Damn Sports Show. Yeah. And
he was the opening.
Yeah, he was the crowd warm-up guy. Yeah. And so someone came up and like, hey, I remember you. You're the positive energy guy. Brody's like, that's right. And then some of the other players came over, and he started doing with Brody. One of the things he was amazingly good at was he just knew mascots to high school all over the country.
Really?
From like playing baseball tournaments and stuff. Yeah. So like one of the players said he was from Bellevue, Washington, and he was like immediately hit him with the name of the high school. He's like, yeah, that's where I went. Named the mascot. He's like, well, that's crazy. How do you know that? And he was like, there's a red robin if you get off the highway on the corner. And like, dude, it was Tim Lincecum was just like, wow, how do you know all this stuff? And he goes, because I get it. And then he started going through all the players. And I just stood there in awe. And the Giants manager, Bruce Bochy, came up and was standing there, and he was just watching Brody interact with him. And he was like, hey, you know. He just mumbles.
Yeah.
I literally could not understand a single thing he said. Talked for like a minute straight. I'm like, and then Brody came over and he's like, yes, only Major League Baseball manager born outside of the United States. And he's like, whoa. Brody nailed it. And then we walked back over to the Dodgers side, and immediately Don Mattingly was the coach at the time. And he was like, you're such a traitor, Brody. Brody, what? He said, you're over there just talking to the enemy? You go, Don, I represent Major League Baseball. But yeah, he was a one of a kind.
Yeah.
One of those guys that, you know, even when he was alive, everyone would be, you just hear people doing Brody impressions all over the place.
You worked late night with him a lot.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was one of those guys that, like, he did a comedy special, I think it was like a year and a half ago here. Filmed it in the main room, specifically had him go up late.
Yeah.
So that it was that Brody late night vibe.
In other words, after people had started to leave.
So it was like a third of the audience.
Yeah.
And that was his magic. That's when, you know, every time someone got up, then he would attack them immediately. Oh, negative, you're leaving, arms crossed, negative. And it was like it was just one of those things where if you got it, then you got it. And if you didn't, then there's no reason to even talk to you.
I was reading tributes. Was it you that said was it controlled chaos? Was that his forte, controlled chaos?
I didn't say that, but that is kind of what his shtick was. He was the ringmaster of the show. Yeah. And you know, he did a lot of bizarre things. Like I so many times I was sitting in the back with the other comics because he was the comic that it was going to be different. It wasn't going to be the same set. So even if he did the same bits, the reactions of people were going to be different. So
and the stuff he would do in between bits was always fresh.
Always fresh. So
that was how we were with Paul Mooney.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, and so it was. But you'd see people get up, and then they'd walk by, and he's just yelling. And then you're like, yeah, maybe you should be at the Laugh Factory because we keep it real at the Comedy Store. So if you don't get it, that's on you, I guess. But yeah, very, very sad. It was one of those things where I came up here on Friday, and you know the building is packed, and you got the funniest people in the world here, and everyone is sad, and that's always a weird vibe. But it was great because everyone was hugging each other, and you could hear Brody Stevens' impressions in every corner of the building.
Well, what I noted was that Friday night in the main room, it was, when I first got here, all the doormen and everyone was really downcast. Yeah. And the crowd wasn't. The crowd was fantastic. Esther Pavitsky was in tears before she went on before me. Yeah. And then, but she got it together, went out and just had a great set. I went out there and you know me, I'm sociopath. I don't have any feelings. I just murder the crowd. Yeah, it's all about me, right?
Yeah, the cyborg. You're the Terminator.
Yeah, and so I just leave. Yeah. And then I read the next morning what you said. Is that everybody went through this grief. They gathered together. They started telling stories and did impressions. Yeah. And what I want to impress on you, because you're like a bridge to the really younger comics, is that just as Bruce Baum and my generation, we'll tell Ollie Joe stories, we'll tell Mitzi stories till the day we die. And that way they stay alive to us. Yeah. Brody's going to be that guy for you all. For sure. Because of all the interaction he gave him himself outside.
Yeah, I was watching one of his final Periscope videos that he did like the day before he passed, and he would just do these videos of him walking around the valley. He was from the valley, loved the valley, stayed in the valley, and one of the things he was saying, it's just him talking, and he was talking about how I don't want to be forgotten. And that was like one of those things that he worried about, was that he would be forgotten at some point. He would just be some guy where people would be like, hey, whatever happened to him? And I watched it, and it made me so sad, like watching it, but then also made me realize, like, if that's something he was really concerned about, there's no chance of that ever happening.
Right,
Because people will remember him
Yeah.
forever. He was
so
unique.
he talked about envisioning things, and if you envision that you're never going to be forgotten, you're going to do the things to ensure that you're never forgotten.
Yeah.
And
He did,
that
man.
led him over the cliff too.
Yeah, he he was just one of those guys. He came to my wedding, and who's the guy that brought a tambourine and drumsticks? And I looked over, and they were playing Bob O'Reilly by The Who.
Yeah.
The DJ was playing, and Brody just had the chairs set up the way he would, and he was drumming,
Yeah.
doing his chair drumming thing, and my 3-year-old nephew had a drumstick and was just banging along, and he just connected already. I'm like, oh, that's Brody. And he's like, well, does he bring a tambourine and drumsticks everywhere? And it's like, yeah, he does. But it's just going through all these different things where I'm like, I'll
Was
never
he
be
at
able
your
to forget.
back? Did he do the toast or something like that?
Oh, no, I was at Stephen Randolph and
Stephen
Chelsea
Randolph and
Skidmore's
Chelsea.
wedding, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, two of the people that work here got
Yeah,
married.
Chelsea Skidmore has a show here as
Yeah.
well. Yeah.
And Brody did a toast. Was basically him doing some of his act
Yeah.
and aggressively yelling at people the way he would.
Yeah.
But I just watched that video for the first time a couple days ago. Hilarious.
Yeah.
The guy was great for every occasion. Wouldn't matter.
What are you going to take on the stage? Because you improvise more than any comic I know. I saw Jimmy Brogan and Alan Steven, who Bruce Baum knows very well.
Mhm.
They were tremendous improvisers and working with the crowd. And for Bruce's sake and for Greg Hilbert's sake, this guy's the best I've ever seen. I mean, he's just a maestro up there. And I've always been trying to get you to do a talk show where you do that with the audience
Yeah.
and then sit down and interview people.
Right.
Because you're a master at that. You made yourself into that.
Yeah. I just did bits for the first few years I was
Yeah.
here. When I showed up, I was an impressionist.
Yeah.
And then all of my peers were like, don't ever do that stuff again. And they weren't original. I was doing a lot of like second hack Will Ferrell bits and stuff.
Yeah.
And they were they're looking out for me, I guess.
But
in
they were
some
your
way.
comedy training wheels. You
Yeah.
don't have to be ashamed.
Yeah. So that's just how I started. And when I started in Kansas City, it worked great there. So
Sure.
I'm like, this is
What do
awesome.
they know?
Yeah, exactly. I came to the Comedy Store and I went up for the first open mic for like 6 people and just bombed terribly. I'm like, well, this is weird. But I started working the door here, and my peers, the other door guys, were like, you got to stop doing that.
Yeah.
So I did, and then I started trying to do bits, and then I probably had 2 minutes of material
Yeah.
when I showcased for Mitzi, and I was just doing a showcase to keep my job as the doorman, and she passed me. Like you were saying, it was all just charisma up top.
Yeah.
I walked around the stage and acted like the 8 people in that crowd were so happy to see me when they were just staring at me like, who's this asshole?
Mitzi loved Protestants.
Yeah. I walked up, she said, oh, you're great, but you got to do stage time. And all I'm thinking was like, I'm trying. I didn't even know she had passed me until I was told. Duncan Trussell, who was the talent coordinator at the time, came up to me and said, Mitzi loved you, man. You're passed. And I'm like, oh, these guys are fucking with me. There's no way that's true. And then they called me a couple days later and said, yeah, what are your avails? And I'm like, this is real? And so I started doing stage time, and I started doing bits, and I got a little bit better at it. I was good enough to get some laughs, but still bad enough that Paulie would take me on the road with him.
Yeah.
And
Paulie will not be upstage.
no, he's not a fan. Once you get too good, he's like, dude, you're fired, bro. What? But yeah, so I started doing bits, and then another comic that passed that we lost, Freddie Soto, watched me one night in the OR, and he was like, hey, listen, you're way funnier off stage. Don't do those
So
bits
by
anymore.
subtraction, you got to your stage.
Yeah, and so then it was like,
That's,
all right.
That's how Alan Steven got it, too.
Yeah, it was just get rid of the stuff that is not as funny as I could be and see how it works.
And you'll walk on stage and you'll ask a few questions and you'll start getting information from the crowd, and just like your computer starts going off and you just start mixing and matching,
Tying it
and the
together.
crowd feels attention, they feel your originality, and you're the perfect guy. Like at that time between 10 and 11, when they've seen acts now, then they'll see some originality.
Yeah, they usually put me up now right after the biggest comics. So it'll
Which
be,
is good for you as
Which
well.
is great for me, yeah. So, there'll be Chris D'Elia, Joe Rogan, Mark Maron, then me.
Yeah, because it's a perfect break. They get to do crowd work, and then
Yeah.
and then the planned show can resume after you.
Right, and that's it, you know, because they don't know who I am, so they're not sitting there going, hey, we need to, you know, we don't know who this next comic is. They're just, I'm immediately so in their face.
Yeah.
They can't say, hey, we gotta get out of here.
Yeah, yeah.
We saw who we came to see. It's just like, I'm part of this now,
Yeah.
so.
Which of the rooms are your favorite?
My favorite's always been the OR.
Really?
That's where I feel the most comfortable and at home. The main room has been so great for the last 2 years that I really look forward to performing in there. But to me, pure comedy is the original.
Well, as a technical question, the main room has this area at the front that is your natural arena, but it has tremendous bleachers over on the right-hand and left-hand side.
Yeah.
Do you ever bring them in as well?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you basically focus where you can see for the most part.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I'll kind of ask general questions to the crowd.
Then
If
you
I get a
work by
response,
sonar.
yeah. If I get a response or I hear someone who sounds, you know, more intoxicated than the other cheers, then I'll pinpoint that section and pick on them. And people love it, especially if someone's sitting in the way back, and now they're becoming part of the show. If they're yelling, they want to be a part of it.
Right.
And you know, there's little rules I've kind of developed over the years just from doing it long enough. With you can't really pick on women because the crowd will feel sorry for them.
Right.
But if they start drunkenly shouting, and the whole crowd's like, "She's a witch, get her!" and then you just really go hard. So you gotta
that
pick
nice
your
Kansas
fight.
boy goes bye-bye
Yeah,
for a while.
exactly.
Do you ever go back and play Kansas City?
I haven't played there in years. There was the club I started at was called Stanford and Sons, and the owner just passed last year. Was a real crazy kind of guy. He was real into blow for a long time and stuff. But I went back maybe 9 years ago and was going to do. I was supposed to feature, and then I got into town, and then he called me and said, "Hey, Chris Porter's in town, so we'll bring you back a different week." I'm like, I'm already here. And then he said, "Well, I'll see if I can get you 5 minutes one of the shows." And I was like, F this guy. So then I was more offended by anything, so I haven't played there.
Oh, with your
since
family
then.
and everything in L.A., you're better staying here.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, look, I'm going to stay on you about coming up with this talk show where you work with the crowd, because this guy is the best in the world at what he does. And you've just seen him. His name's Rick Ingraham. Thank you so much for being with us. I appreciate you. And we'll be right back after this. Don't forget, go to the liquor store and get some Bacardi right now. It's sweet, pain go bye-bye juice. We'll wrap up here, Comedy Store Tonight, starring Argus Hamilton. And two things I want you to know. First of all, next week we have one of the top comedians in the world. Theo Vaughn is going to be here. So spread the word. We'll, of course, be letting everybody know through social media. But he is one of a kind. And we're just basically, with guys like Bruce Baum and Rick Ingraham, we're just going into a sweeps period. And we're going to have some of the top talent in the world right here on this show. So put this on your viewing calendar and keep us in mind. And also keep in mind how much we're going to miss Brody Stevens, who was on this show just 4 weeks ago. An outstanding character. And like I was telling Rick, I hope the young comedians know that he'll be kept alive through all the great stories that this magnificent human being left us with. And he just left us too soon, way too soon. But with any, if I had my way, I'd have him saying hi to Mitzi upstairs in the room right now. Nobody wants to die anytime soon, because nobody could follow Brody Stevens. So I'll not try right now, and just leave him with this word. If you can hear us, Brody, because this club is full of ghosts. He may be here now. We love you, and we always will. just like we love you all, and thank you all for showing up tonight. I'm Argus Hamilton. Welcome to the Comedy Store tonight. Thank you so much.
You got it.